Hello, this is John Spink. I'm the Director and Assistant Professor of the Food Fraud Initiative at Michigan State University. And this is my presentation, Preventing Food Fraud, Including Counterfeiting, to the Australian Wine Industry Technical Conference here in Adelaide, Australia, July 27th, 2016. First off, overview of our program and what we do. We are a university and we focus on curriculum and teaching. And the first item we'd like to talk about is our massive open online course. And you'll notice in the upper corner, or you might not notice, but that it's co-branded with the Chinese National Center for Food Safety Risk Assessment. I was an advisor for them last year, and one of our projects was to create this MOOC on an overview of food fraud. It's two 2-hour webinars. It's free, open online, and offered twice a year. It's also got a version with Mandarin subtitles. And then we also do executive education or short courses. So these are industry-focused and condensed versions. And then we have online graduate classes. These are real Michigan State University graduate classes offered 100% online. So even if you were in East Lansing, Michigan with us, you couldn't physically go to a class. They're all offered online. And then we've got 5 of them that are related to food fraud. Specifically, the first one is a deep dive into that topic. And if you take 4 of the classes, you can receive a graduate certificate in food fraud prevention. That's under our food safety program. And those credits can roll into a Master's of Science in Food Safety that we do offer at Michigan State. And again, that is 100% online. So first off, to look at the topic here in Australia, specifically for wines, is to look at one of the biggest markets. So developing countries definitely are a big market, and developed countries, but specifically China. So this was a review of a conference where I was invited to present last year. And the real challenge, and why are we here, are consumers. And consumers in that market, but then in many markets. And there's a different variety of consumers. There's different retail outlets. There's drivers and issues and concerns and challenges for everybody throughout the supply chain. So what we showed here is just a variety of different restaurants or outlets for purchase of the products. And the one that I find most interesting is very much in the middle, is the online e-commerce orders. So many times consumers, and more Chinese consumers, are getting deliveries to their home or work, and that reduces the chance for them to compare products, even on the shelf, next to other products. They're really looking at images, and that image may not even be an image of the product they're actually buying. So there's a tremendous amount of challenges, and we have to consider all different aspects of this to reduce food fraud. The threats overall. First, for brand Australia. Brand for a country. This is a big deal, especially growing into new markets. Wine Australia as well. So specifically then is looking at all Australian wines across the market, and then specific regions, companies, or brands. So there is a collective brand, and that's something very important as entire regions or countries are trying to either move into new markets, such as developing countries, or try to move upmarket in developed markets. So in developing countries, this is broadly the BRICS, the Brazil, Russia, India, China type countries. These are new customers that you're trying to pursue. And in developed countries, this is an upsell. So there's a lot of times where the product is trying to move into the premium space. Is it an honor to be knocked off? That's an interesting question. To say that if your brand is valuable and you're getting knocked off, then that's a sign of prestige. But that is maybe an honor as long as the counterfeiters make quality product. So you have to rely on the criminals to protect your brand as well. And if you're profitable enough to lose 50% of your sales, then you're going to be in good shape. That's probably not the case for too many countries, and a lot of people don't think about that. Once they do think about it, it becomes so challenging and so overwhelming, so outside their normal research or familiarity area that they just do not address it. And that's where we fit in from a research standpoint, just try to focus on that unmet research need. Okay, this is one of my favorite slides. Warning, counterfeiters attend anti-counterfeit conferences. If counterfeiters are making millions on deception and faking your product and hijacking your brand, they are going to work very hard to continue to make millions. We need to expect and assume that they're reading our reports. They're trying to understand our countermeasures. They're probably even trying some way to figure out what we're doing here at this conference. It's completely logical for counterfeiters to attend anti-counterfeit conferences. So we need to understand that and address it. There's a shelf life on secrets. And that's something that we need to really consider, and instead of fighting it, try to communicate with the bad guys, to let them know that if they try to attack your products, that there's a higher risk of them getting caught or higher cost of conducting the crime. You want them to move on to someone else at this point. So let's take a wine example. So counterfeiting sounds like it's just counterfeiting. Just deal with it. Counterfeiters want to make money. That's simple, right? Well, let's look at a wine example. So let's say your grapes are growing slow. And I just did a Google search on that. And so, gosh, there's some different advice there on Google. And then it says you need a fertilizer. So Googled grape fertilizer. And there's a number there. Why not pick one? Well, here what I did is picked one that I knew I had heard of and we use at home in our garden and on our flowers. So why not? Hey, it's just a fertilizer, right? Is it optimal? Is it actually helpful? And that's something that you really look at your decision making. And with your decision making, you look at the science. What is the produce that you're producing? What's the weather conditions, the soil, other factors and conditions involved, so you can pick the optimal solution. What are the characteristics of the problem? So not all growing slow is treated the same. There's different aspects of that. So then you look at all the treatments possible for specifically this produce, weather, soil, and the characteristic of the problem. At that point, you can really pick the best solution. And it's usually something very targeted, and you have a high confidence that it will be successful because of the science behind it and experience that you may have had with a specific type of risk. And so you step back to understand the science of the details. Ditto for anti-counterfeiting. Counterfeiting is not a general concept. It is very specific and targeted to specific types of fraud. So we'll go into those in a little bit more detail. So defining food fraud. More broadly, the concept is food fraud. This is something across the food industry. It's something the U.S. Food Safety Modernization Act is addressing, the Global Food Safety Initiative, and others. Traditionally, the food industry has focused and been more concerned about ingredients such as Sudan red colorant in sauces and spices, horse meat and beef, melamine in infant formula, and skim milk powder. But counterfeiting is definitely a part of fraud. So overall, the action is deception using food for economic gain. That's a broad concept, and it's important to look at it in this broad sense because countermeasures can be implemented across a wide range of your activities. The motivation is economic gain. And it's really too simple to say economic gain. That's like saying that the grapes just are growing slow. So we need to look at more details of why and how the bad guys perceive it's a good decision for them to commit fraud. And the effect, there's always an economic threat. Every time someone's losing, whether it's a government not getting taxes, whether it's a retailer not putting product on the shelf that they believe is what it is, brand owners, and there's not always a public health threat, not an imminent, acute incident outbreak, foodborne illness, but there's always a vulnerability because we don't know how the bad guys are handling the products. It can be easily mishandled, and the food industry is very complex. So there's always a vulnerability. And this is where the focus has been for government food agencies around the world. We have a number of examples here. This is a great single slide if you ever go looking at broadly what is specifically food fraud. So for the different types of fraud, you'll hear, this is from the Global Food Safety Initiative and the food fraud think tank that I was a part of. And you'll see dilution, substitution, contaminant. Those are normal adulteration type concepts. Adulterant substances, gray market theft, diversion, mislabeling, unimproved enhancements. Overruns and tampering are in there as well. Date code tampering. But then here's where the focus is for you right now is counterfeiting. You're looking at that product in the market. So this is definitely a part of the full perspective on food fraud. This is a global perspective. So how do we understand the system and how do we select countermeasures? For us, we had two breakthroughs as material scientists, packaging scientists, food safety scientists. Breakthrough was adding criminology and then business decision making, enterprise risk. And so what we did is we drove forward until we felt like there was a real system in place that was self-correcting and balancing. And the core is the fraud opportunity. This is the crime itself. And the research is situational crime prevention. That's been studied since the mid-70s, literally thousands of articles and research in the area. It's also based on rational choice theory. The criminals believe that they are going to make money. They don't enter into this crime thinking that they will get caught. They believe they're making a rational choice. And that's something that if we understand, we can influence that. So this is comprised of the victim, the fraudster, and the guardian and hurdle gaps. And the guardian and hurdle gaps is where we have the most control of the system. What we do first is detect. That's the most basic. And that's going to be always the most scientifically complex to try to authenticate the product itself. And then there's deter. It's specific types of acts or actors that we're trying to stop, such as a bad guy that climbs in your unlocked window on your house. If you close and lock that window or put a bar in the window or an alarm on the window, you're deterring that specific type of act. But the real goal is prevent. The goal is not to catch bad product. The goal is not to arrest people. The goal is to prevent this from occurring in the first place. So we need to consider the entire system and prevention so that we can define very specific detection and deterrent actions that's specifically like the fertilizer to understand really what's going on so we can pick that type of fertilizer. But also there might be a way for us to deal with this throughout the year to reduce the need for it, to prevent the need for that fertilizer in the first place. That's the focus. So what we've got here is we review all the incidents in the background that feed in. We have to do that on an ongoing basis since fraud does change. We do first an initial screening. This is a real quick pass. And we've got articles on this that are based in decision sciences and business. And then we look at this across all types of fraud. You may look first at counterfeits in more detail, but really the other ones should be assessed at the same time, because you think about tampering and theft. That's probably as much of a problem as counterfeiting for you, especially if you lose that first product sale. Overruns, so if you have any contract manufacturers, labels, things like that. Same with diversion as well. Diversion is product that's out of your control, which creates risks. So this then is looked at quickly first, enterprise risk. So is this a problem that's big enough that you need to deal with? It might not be big enough to deal with. It probably is. So you look at ranking it, and then before really making any decisions, you consider all your types of countermeasures. And you consider those countermeasures in how they fundamentally change the fraud opportunity. And this is the big key, is that we look at specific types of fraud and specific type of actions. Who will use this information to do what, where, and how will it reduce the motivation for the bad guys to attack, and very specifically change their motivation, such as bars on your window. That's very clear. You can explain that very clearly of why that deters a bad guy from breaking into your house, and that's a real goal here. Then we do a more detailed vulnerability assessment, and then there's tools out there that are already implemented, and with that we do another enterprise-wide risk assessment and really make the final decisions on what is an acceptable level of risk, and then these risk treatments or countermeasures, how they specifically reduce that risk. And this becomes very quantitative. These are things that CFOs do. They're trained on. There's regulations on this. Public companies are required to do enterprise risk for the overall corporation, and even private companies that are fairly large would have auditors that would still look at the books and look at these kind of things. So this is a system, and you'll notice this, a system. Information coming in, a way to assess it in the fraud opportunity, ongoing process to look at the vulnerabilities and rank, continuing to look at countermeasures, and always calibrating against the enterprise risk. As you're entering new markets or some dynamics change, more information about the market or your product or concerns, then this whole system is dynamic and will continue to adjust. And then finally looking at implementation steps. So it's one thing for us to tell you the whole model and this theory, but if we don't look all the way through to implementation, then we're not really doing our jobs. And so this was an article that just came out earlier this month on food fraud prevention policy and its implementation steps for government, agency, or industry. And this definitely applies here. We've got additional articles that are coming out on how to conduct each of the steps. But a couple keys, and I think the main takeaways for you as a group is concept one, to formally and specifically mention food fraud and food counterfeiting as a food safety and economic issue. If you don't admit it up front and make it public that this is something you're worried about, concerned about, and acting on, then there's just a lack of focus or awareness. if the senior people at a corporation are very worried about this, but the managers and directors don't know about it at all, then it's not a focus. It's not a concern, and it's not something that they'll work on. In order to prevent economically motivated health hazards, government with industry should formally and holistically address all types of food fraud, not just adulterant substances. I would say that maybe with the wine industry, it's the opposite. Instead of just looking at counterfeits and finished goods in the market, to look all the way up the supply chain, because there may be other fraudulent products. Maybe it's even fertilizers that are counterfeits in one way or another. That could undermine your entire brand, such as if you've got an organic type product, then you may be accidentally or inadvertently buying counterfeit product that doesn't meet those requirements. Concept 2, create a government with industry-wide food fraud prevention plan. You're worried about brand Australia and developing premium products to continue to keep the economy growing, and Wine Australia is also looking holistically at the brand and the concept, and those can be undermined very easily with just a few fraud incidents. So it doesn't have to be detailed or very big, but to look at this industry-wide food fraud prevention plan is real efficient. And I think that's something to start off to look overall how you work together. And then if there are best practices and common thinking, harmonized terms, then there will be efficiency to implementing and preventing this. Prevention not only requires overarching strategies, but also the system-wide commitment to a plan. This includes the regulatory agencies of a government as well as all resources of a food producer. Again, this is making the point that it's a combination. If you have this overall plan and you're working together, then you can start to understand the entire system and you can protect the entire system. With Michigan State, we have a lot of engagements, possibilities. We travel around the world and conduct training sessions, not on every continent, but around quite a bit. And it looks like we'll be in Australia and New Zealand a lot more in the future. So we have the executive education, but then also I'd encourage you to look at our free massive open online course. Acknowledgements. There's a lot of people that have been very helpful to us, and I hope in the future we're adding your group as in those acknowledgements as well. With that, I will say thank you and take questions.